Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are grown, they will not depart from it. One of the greatest joys of parenting is the comfort in knowing that I am bringing up my children in the right way. That right way implies that there are equally wrong ways of bringing up children. It doesn't matter whether you are aware of it or not. I need you to know that there is the right way. It is only one specific, the right way to bring up a child. Then there are wrong ways of bringing up a child. So as a parent, one of the greatest responsibilities that we have is to be conscious of the environment that you're bringing up your children. How aware are you of the environment and the impact or the effect that environment has on your child or your children? It's very important that as a parent, we need to constantly factor that when we are looking at the environments in which we are bringing up our children, the environment is much more than geographical features, geographical indicators. Environment has to deal with what morals, what ideals, what values do I bring up my child around? What mannerism, what conducts, what habits do I bring up my child around? So if we bring up our children as though you don't care, then there is a way that life, and Waswahili walisema, mtoto umleavyo ndivyo akuavyo. So the implication and the responsibility placed upon parents is one of the most important duties you can ever dispense in your life. The ability to inform and to be aware and to determine the environments in which you bring up your child. One of those things that I'm eternally grateful for is having been brought up in the military. I'm an MRS baby. And as an MRS baby, the conditioning I got around the environment that I was brought up, I literally lived 24 hours a day within 4 walls of a barracks. And the 4 walls of a barracks conditioned my thinking, conditioned my mannerisms, conditioned my habits, conditioned my conversations. I can have a conversation with someone and I just look at how free you are with your wording, and it will inform my thinking on what environments you grew up in. I might be wrong, but there are ways that we conduct ourselves which are indicative of the environments in which we were brought up. Growing up in the barracks was something quite interesting because there was no line between you and your father. There was no line. Because the same expectation the barracks had over your father translated inversely to you as well. So you are not expected to be moving anyhow in the military barracks. You are not expected to be conversing anyhow in the military barracks. You are not expected to move or to conduct yourself or to dress anyhow you wanted. There were people that were called RSM, DSM, GSM. These were people that were mandated with maintaining the overall discipline and conduct in any military barracks. If there were people that we feared growing up, were these DSMs, GSMs, and RSM. Who is an RSM? An RSM is a regimental sergeant major. A DSM is a departmental sergeant major. And a GSM, which was only in garrisons, was a garrison sergeant major. These people would make sure that you are lined, you are straighter than a ruler. These people, they didn't drop the ball when it came to ensuring that the overall habit, the overall discipline was well maintained. So when you grew up in the military, movement was highly restricted. It's one of those things that I'm really trying to find out. How do I adjust to fit into civilian lifestyle? I have this thing that in the military, the trumpet would go at 6. And at 6, they would bring down the flag. When they brought down the flag, literally, movement was restricted. So in my life today, I don't find any activity. If you want ever to have an activity with me past 6 o'clock, it is in very rare instances. Why? That is how I was brought up. But regardless of how we were brought up, which barracks you came from, which environments, whether your dad was a commissioned officer or your dad was a non-commissioned officer like most of our parents, the discipline and the expectation was the same. But there is one element that if you ever have a conversation with anyone who ever lived in a barracks, there is one element that all of us will always say, that one I experienced, that one I experienced. And that is what it's called ration. There is nothing that made life fun like ration. Every barrack, and sometimes you would wonder the logistics, the extent of logistical approach that had to be maintained so as to run this entire infrastructure of ration across all barracks. And I'm not talking about police barracks. I don't know if policemen had rations, but in the military we had rations. So what was a ration? A ration was a daily supply of necessities. So 5 days a week, government would ensure that you received a daily supply of necessities. So there was ration on Monday, ration on Tuesday, ration on Wednesday, ration on Thursday, and ration on Friday. What they gave you on Monday was different from what you received on Tuesday. What they gave you on Wednesday was the same as what you received on Monday. And what they gave you on Thursday was different from what you received on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. And what they gave you on Friday was the same as what you received on Wednesday and Monday. So on Monday, ration would happen around 4 o'clock. So when you would go there with your basin, then you would receive daily supply. Regardless of the number of the people that you had in your family, the daily ration was the same. So on Monday, you would receive bread, half a loaf of bread. You would receive fruits. Sometimes there would be oranges. You would receive potatoes. You would receive veggies, cabbage, and meat. That was at 4 o'clock. In the morning, every day of the week, we would receive milk, 2 packets of milk and half a loaf of bread. On Tuesday, the rationing was dry. So on Tuesday is where we received cereals. So on Tuesday, we had rice, we had beans, and the rest. On Wednesday was a repetition of what they did, was a repeat of what they did on Monday. On Thursday, now they would supply you with things to perform personal admin. This is where you would get soap, you'd get a razor blade, and on Friday, the supply was different. But whenever we think about it, what informed the decision making that the government had to employ rationing strategy? There are things that now, as an observer, I feel that this is why the government had to employ the ration service. 1, uniformity. You know, in those days, because of meager salary, government had to ensure that all people lived at the same base, from the same level. Every person received the same thing. So if we were eating meat, we knew our neighbors were also eating meat. So there was no one who would surprise the neighbors. There was no surprise in the neighborhood. Why? All of us are eating meat. All of us received meat. So that is one. It was very important to ensure uniformity. The other one was to avoid interacting with the civilians. If there was something that military in those days really guarded, was to minimize the level of interaction between men and women in the service and their civilian counterparts. And so they really limited that. That's why people would go to MRS for hospital. People would go to their supermarkets called AFCO, Armed Forces Canteen Organization, and that was that. Subsequently, they even allowed people to come and clip our hairs. We had our hair. We had barbers in the barracks. So that is how government really restricted that interaction between the military, the men and women in the force, and people living outside the barracks. So that one was one of the functions for rationing. The third reason was government had this imagination that the soldiers did not know how to handle finances. So because they were not trained about financial management in recruits training school, so there was that thought that if these people, we gave them the money, then mtu atalewa. Na mtu akilewa, the second week this person will start to starve. So to ensure that, government was of the opinion that these people are not smart to manage finances. So government took the initiative to manage finances on their behalf. That one was extremely interesting. The other one was assumed uniformed welfare. Assumed uniform welfare was that we had to take responsibility over our men and women. We had to take responsibility over their family, and we had to take responsibility how they are fed, how they are maintained. It was quite interesting that in those days you could not see someone who was plump. Either the person who was plump was either plump as being a patient of diabetes, but there was no one that was plump. Why? All of us received the same thing. It was uniform, it was equal. So that one was assumed uniformed welfare, which was very important. The other one was to cushion against cost of living. I remember there's a time my dad used to earn 1,275, and us guys are six. And my old man would come and say every day when he got his pay slip after dinner, and that is something that I also do myself. My dad, every evening after dinner, he would come, and after us eating, he would place his pay slip there, and then he used to do this: gentlemen, that is what the government has given me. So he would ask us this rhetoric question: would you guys wish I bought you guys clothes, or I just continue paying school fee? So the thing was, no, just continue paying school fee. Why? Because food was catered for. So that one was to cushion against the cost of living, that regardless of what happened out there, regardless of inflation, government ensured that their people were met, and that meeting of their needs were at an optimum, which is something that I really appreciate. The last one was rationing helps in consistent supply of nutrients proportionately. That there was no one who was obese in the military. It was hard to find someone obese in the military, not even with our children, not even with our siblings. You wouldn't find an obese person. Why? The rationing was all the same. So all of us fed at the same rationing, all of us fed proportionately. This is something that I also carry with me today. And all that part of the ration aspect really helps me to understand and even how to appreciate how, as a father now, I can manage my resources. How, as a father now, I can stretch those resources so that if this is how we were brought up in the military, now every coin I receive, that is how I ration coins as well. This will go to such and such. This will go to such and such. This will go to such and such. That is how I was brought up in the military. And when I'm sharing this, it's not to look down on anyone. I'm merely sharing how I was brought up. I would really be interested to hear, how were you brought up? What aspects of virtues or ideals did you pick up as a function of the environments in which you're brought up? I would be very much interested to interact with you in the comment section. My name is Ogwang. I'm an MRS baby, and that is how I was brought up. There is no military baby, no MRS baby anywhere, as long as they lived in the barracks, who will not identify with ration. How was ration in your barracks? What days? Were they the same day that I have explained? I would be interested to know the same. Until then, let's interact in the comment section, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care. God bless, and bye-bye.